Is it up now?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, thank you, Director Sen, members of the board. Wanted to provide you an update on the progress on the electrical system work on the island. Kind of a recap of the outages that we've had this year. The status of the interim improvements that were funded in the fiscal year 20 that we managed to fund through the fiscal year 20 budget. The development of the new switchyard location, some resident inquiries and future initiatives. This year, we've had a total of 11 unplanned outages. The last occurred actually the day of our October board meeting. Later that afternoon, power went out. Of those outages, you see the breakdown in terms of duration. The two of them lasted 3 to 4 hours. The causes, roughly half of them were caused by damaged equipment. Others being caused by bird strikes and tree limbs, and one that the PUC was unable to determine the cause of. In terms of the interim improvements, here we're referring to the installation of the reclosers and fault indicators that PUC has been doing. The reclosers allow the system to maintain service through most transient faults, like bird strikes and tree limbs, and should limit the area impacted by more serious faults. The fault indicators assist crews in identifying the location of a fault to speed the restoration of power. The reclosers were installed last summer, but they did require some calibration to function properly without still causing the main switchgear to trip, resulting in an island-wide outage. The fault indicator installations in Oakland and on island were substantially completed this month. There's one location they still want to install that, but they're having some difficulty. We show on the left the fault indicators, and on the right that's a recloser installation. On the images up right now, you see the electrical overhead line that is being installed, as well as here is the location of the new switchyard improvements that are underway. And again, the new switchyard is going to be adjacent to the planned wastewater treatment plant site. And there's an aerial photograph of the switchyard location. You can see the pads that have been being installed there for the equipment. And again, this area has been through the geotechnical surcharge process. So in the image in the upper left, you can see that the grade of the new switchyard is about 4 feet above the surrounding grade. That's indicative of the amount of fill that will be brought in throughout this area of the island in the future. And in the images on the right, you see closer up images of the pads installed and locations where the pads have yet to be poured, but you can see the conduits that will be running up through those pads to feed the future switchgear. This is just an image from over behind the ship shape of the new electrical overhead going in. There's 5 separate boom trucks operating in this photo simultaneously to install overhead lines. In terms of the schedule, December 9th is when TICD will be completing their work on the pads and substructures to allow SFPUC to begin work within the switchyard. And January 9th, the overhead line installation should be complete. And then I mentioned the current schedule is to complete the installation of and commissioning of the switchgear by the end of March. That is a delay from our original schedule, but a goal we should be able to meet. And the date of the final cutover will be determined, but we'll be sure to provide residents a minimum of 72 hours notice before any planned outages that are necessary to complete the cutover to the new switchgear. Moving to issues that have been brought up by residents to ask us to explore. Over the past several months, we've looked at several different topics that have been brought up. The idea of island-wide battery storage with solar, individual residential battery storage potentially augmented by solar, and then most recently, portable battery storage with solar as an alternative to generators, portable generators. So last spring, we had a proposal forwarded to us that had been prepared by Custom Power Solar and CalWave Technologies. This was included and packaged to the board. So I'm kind of recapping here. This had been discussed in the past. The proposal was to provide centralized battery storage of 6 megawatt hours and a solar generation capacity of 1.44 megavolts. The proposal as presented was, it was presumed that these costs could be offset by rebate programs. However, Treasure Island facilities aren't eligible for those rebate programs because of their former Navy status. They're not a PG&E or Southern California Edison service area, which helped to fund those programs. At this time, the funding is not available to self-finance improvements of this scale, although TIDA and SFPUC will continue to study the potential for city-owned and controlled on-island solar generation and battery storage as a reliability measure in the future. On residential battery storage augmented by solar, we had a letter that was addressed to the TIDA board and to TIDA requesting the installation of battery backup technology in Treasure Island housing. Specifically, Tesla power walls were mentioned. We've contacted an installer of Tesla power wall and similar systems for rough estimates of what the installation costs might be. Preliminary figures we've been provided are $60,000 per residential building, which would be 3 power wall units. And if we wanted to augment that with 12 kilowatts of photovoltaic generation capacity, then that would increase the cost per building to $111,000. We currently have 113 occupied residential buildings, which would translate to costs between 6.7 and 12.5 million. Again, we were doing all 113 buildings. I think we could expect some volume discount, but still a significant, would require a significant investment that we don't currently have funding for. Last month, we were provided contact information for an organization called Footprint Project. They specialize in the design and distribution of clean emergency power solutions. They're portable battery storage units augmented with solar panels. And TIDA and SFPUC staff recently had a call with Footprint Project to learn more about their assets and deployment capabilities. These systems are not designed to power buildings, but could serve, as we set up last November of 2019, could serve as a centralized facility where residents could charge phones, medical devices, et cetera. And we're going to continue to coordinate with Footprint to do an on-island demonstration of one of their trailers. It's something that they offered and were interested in bringing it out. SFPUC is also interested in this as part of their citywide responsibilities, both to power pop-up sleeping shelters as well as other emergency response functions. This is an area that we definitely plan to continue to explore. And then just a few words on future initiatives. Following the energization of the new switchyard, which again, the new switchyard and moving to the distribution of the power on the island through new switchgear is going to be a substantial improvement in our system reliability. But there are additional things that PUC and PIDA are planning even after that work to continue to improve system performance. The PUC will be relocating fuses and reclosers within the existing distribution for optimal performance with new distribution from the new switchyard and the 9th Street overhead line. The PUC will also be inspecting fuses and transformers to identify potentially vulnerable items that we could replace, and our priority there in replacing suspect equipment will be to address those in the residential area first, not only for the benefit of residents, but because that's some of the area that will be the last to be developed, so equipment there will be in service the longest. So that concludes my updates. I'd be happy to take any questions that you have.
Thank you. Let's see, I'll open it up to the board first, if there's any questions or comments. Yes, Linda.
Yes, thank you so much, Bob, for giving all these scenarios. Just to help to simplify the presentation, because right now we're getting into winter. And so things are going to be, and with the COVID ID now, things are being pushed even further. We're looking at maybe another 4 to 6 months ahead of us. Could you, a series of questions here, just take a blueprint now. What are the probable incidents? And I know that the PUC has been going back and forth and making, some improvement here and there. First question, what are the probable, incidents that you foresee from November based on the history that we've had so far? So that's number one. I'm glad that you are going to be having the footprint demonstration. It would be great also to know when the time that is going to be. And again, with the sun and everything now, what are the implications? Because solar, for the backup, how does this generator are charged? And what are the charging mechanisms? It would be great to know. Number three, so far we know that on some of the rare incidents, when you have outages for 3 to 4 hours, to me, those kinds have tremendous adverse effect on the residents, especially folks with medical, whatever, and it puts spoilage. Everybody right now is being encouraged to stock their freezer or wherever, because of the COVID ID. And then you have all these unreliability. So what are the implications in there? And from PUC standpoint, and for city there, are there anything, again, we're not going to be able to have 60,000 per building. It's that, distance are very expensive. But what could be done or something there to, help someone that the milk is spoiled or there's something, So those are just the general, questions. And lastly, the time. When do we think, in 2021, that all this improvement infrastructure, the electrical system improvement that you demonstrated, that we can really say in June 2021, we should be able to go back to 95%, electrical availability or whatever. So those are just my general question. Thank you.
Thank you. In terms of the causes of outages, as I mentioned, we had 10 outages this past year where we were able to identify the cause of the outage. Two of those were tree limbs. Both of those occurred on Yerba Buena Island, and the outage was limited to Yerba Buena Island. So we haven't had a lot of problems between tree limbs and the trees on Treasure Island, and outages on Treasure Island. On Treasure Island, we did have 3 bird strikes. All of those happened in the late spring between April and June. I'm not saying that's a strict law, that's when the geese are coming through. They do migrate in both directions, but that happened to be when we had the outages last year or this year due to bird strikes. Of the 5 outages that we had due to equipment failures, 3 of those were related to failed cross arms on poles. The SFPUC has done visual inspections of the poles on the island, attempting to identify cross arms that might be, aged and in danger of becoming loose or creating a failure. Our most recent outage, the one that happened in October, was a short in an underground line that fed one of the pump stations, the stormwater pump stations in the residential neighborhood. That underground line was abandoned, and that pump station is now fed with an overhead line, so as to remove the potential for that underground line to have moisture intrusion and have a fault. So that's kind of the nature of what has the outages we've had in the past or this year, and measures that could potentially mitigate those. Yeah, we certainly can share information. I know that there was information that was produced statewide with the rolling blackouts on how to respond to blackouts and help preserve your food and so forth. And we can make sure to update that information and distribute it to residents as well as we continue to move forward. Again, as I mentioned in the presentation, you asked about schedule. The schedule for the new switchgear to be online is the end of March. We will continue to be doing working to improve the system. I don't have a specific date when the other items that I mentioned as priorities in my report will be complete. But when that new switchgear is online, we anticipate that it'll result in significant improvements. And I think the PUC has been continuing to do work with the reclosers, which will also yield benefits. The October outage that we had was limited to the residential neighborhood, which I know is not a consolation to residents, but the reclosers were able to prevent that outage, that short, from causing an island-wide outage. If you compare to the bird strikes that we had earlier in the late spring, occurred south of the Job Corps campus. Unfortunately, we were still in the process of calibrating the reclosers. If we were to have that type of a bird strike at the south end of the island, in the future, we would expect that that would not create an island-wide outage, and that in fact the residential neighborhood would not be affected by that with the reclosers functioning properly. So as we move forward, we expect fewer outages. We expect the outages to be limited to a portion of the island, and with the support of the fault indicators, we would expect service restoration to be quicker as well.
Thank you, Bob. Ruby, hello, Ruby,
Yeah.
did you have a question? Yes.
Thanks. Yeah, thank you for this update, and I appreciate all the details too around some of the follow-up that came from residents and folks directly on the island. I mean, I think this has been said, but I just want to reiterate this, for lack of a better word, this sucks, right? Like we've had this item for a while. I feel like we haven't been able to actually help folks on the island deal with this. So I just want to acknowledge that this is not probably the solutions that people wanted, ourselves included. And it's unfortunate that, we thought that it was going to be done in January in terms of the longer term fix, and now it's getting pushed to March. So I'm just really hoping that we can put pressure on, the contractors in this case, I guess, to make sure that we stick to March. And so anything that we can do to help you, Bob, in that, please let us know. I think that, we just really want to focus on those long-term solutions, because even with the recourse thing that you're talking about, that's not going to prevent, that's going to prevent the impact of the outage, but the core issue of our infrastructure just being super old on this island is, I think, the real issue. The question I was going to ask though is I think I've brought this up before, but the lawsuit, or not even the lawsuit, the outage that happened last year that was potentially caused by a contractor hitting a power line unintentionally, and I think there was some legal stuff going in there, and I think we had talked about, potentially if there was funding that could be awarded if it was a wrongful breach in some way. So just curious if there's any update on that, because potentially these funds could be used in some way. Obviously, it won't cover some of the extremely high cost alternatives, but maybe could provide something to help support residents in emergencies.
Yeah, thank you, Dr. Schifrin. Yeah, unfortunately, it doesn't, in consultation with the city attorney's office, it doesn't appear that we're going to be able to recover any damages related to the November 2019 outage. Yeah, that we won't be able to make any recoveries there, but we'll continue to excuse me, try and improve the system.
Thank you.
Okay. Is there anybody else that would like to speak? Bob, when the new switchgear and switchyard come online, would that solve these blackout problems, or is there still the potential that there will be blackout issues even with the new switchyard?
Yes, there will always be the potential for power outages, but the primary challenge that we have had has been the reliability and fault tolerance of the existing switchgear. So something like a bird strike or a fallen tree limb should not typically result in a power outage, certainly not an island-wide power outage, because it's a transient. The bird strikes the power lines and then falls away from the power lines. There's not a fixed short circuit that is there. So, if we're able to eliminate those types of outages, that in and of itself would reduce by half the number of outages we had last year. But the new equipment and the both in the switchyard and on the distribution system should reduce the number of equipment-related outages as well. And when they do occur, should limit the area impacted. It shouldn't result in island-wide. Most of these should not result in island-wide outages, but more localized outages impacting a smaller portion of the island.
I see. But there's no certainty then that there would be no outages. I mean, I guess the rest of the city, it's the same thing, is that there's no certainty if PG&E were to have issues, that there wouldn't be outages there. But saying that, looking at temporary power sources, I think is something that would be helpful. And your suggestion of the footprint project, which are the mobile charging trailers, I think we really should look into that as a way, as a sort of a temporary stopgap that allows residents to have some access to power if they absolutely need it.
Yeah, no, that their equipment definitely shows a lot of promise, and we're looking forward to the on-island demonstration of that equipment.
Mm-hmm. Okay, and then have we designated certain community spots where there is also generators and power? For instance, the community center and the Y?
The One Treasure Island has a generator, a portable generator that they're able to, with extension cords, provide some power at the ship shape. They actually needed that during the 2019 November election. And then with the villages, we've bought an additional generator and power strips so that we could set up a temporary power charging location either at the YMCA or within the residential neighborhood. So we've got contingency plans to do both.
Okay.
Or to do
but it hasn't been set up yet. The one at the YMCA.
It's again, it's not. We also have looked at what it would take to install a permanent generator to power the building. That's a different thing. What we have are equipment that we can set up during an emergency or during an outage, but it's not permanently installed or set up.
Okay.
We have also looked at since the YMCA is one of the buildings that is expected to be reused, we have been also studying what it would take to install a permanent generator at that facility.
Right. Okay. Well, if you would still continue to look at solutions for temporary power, just as a stopgap during those times when it is truly needed. Yeah. Okay. Are there any other questions on this item? If not, is there public comment?
Yes, there are 2 callers in the queue.
Go ahead.
Hi again, Hope Williams. Thank you, directors, for bringing up these points. I'm not sure if you know, but distant learning will most likely continue into 2021. So really looking at temporary solutions for power, because our children during the last power outage, they weren't able to get access online, and it really had a negative impact as we were trying to roll out devices and try to get our children online. Some devices were actually damaged, and we weren't able to reimburse the families for the damage. So definitely looking at temporary solution is a sense of urgency, and that it does affect how when people go shopping or when they need to just get online and work for those who are doing it, but definitely for our children. We have 300 children that are participating currently in distant learning. My other question is there, if there is possible, could we consider a neighborhood hub backup system, so that in that case that our kids or people who need backup, they have it at least in their neighborhood hub station there. Just really looking at maybe private investors that might consider donating to Treasure Island. I'm just in some way working with community to try and have us, please invite us to the table, because we have not been actively involved in these conversations to bring these solutions on a regular basis. But we would love to support in trying to brainstorm on how to bring these solutions to the island so that we can make sure that while we're still going through COVID, that we can be able to do it effectively. Thank you.
Thank you, Hope. Next caller, please.
Hello, this is Bart Sanders again. I really appreciate the change in tone and discussions around these outages. I do truly appreciate that you guys have been responding and exploring these solutions. Excuse me. And I wanted to point out that I do have another solution, People Power Initiative, which allows other people like developers spending roughly $6 billion in the redevelopment, and they could reinvest some of that into this community, because the whole reason that the grid is not being upgraded is because of the redevelopment. So I believe with the People Power Initiative also that basically portable batteries so that you can move between each unit can be purchased from this collaborative that shares batteries in relation to the PG&E power shutoff, but Treasure Island can become a resource through that collaborative where batteries are purchased. It is the simplest solution and is likely the cheapest solution, even cheaper than possibly the collaboration with Footprint. And I will share that information with the board members. I've just been waiting for the opportunity because of all these other upgrades and updates that you guys have provided. But again, I do really appreciate the change and these other solutions being looked at, and not just the switch grade upgrade and such.
Okay. Thank you, Bartley. Any other callers?
There are no other callers.
So hearing none, the next item, please.
Item number 10, discussion of future agenda items by directors.
And directors, are there any future items that you'd like to bring up at this point in time? Yes, Ruby?
Sorry. I was like trying to, whatever.
Okay.
Just one quick thing is going back to Hope's comment on the funds available in the beginning around some of the families, and I know that she's coordinating that with you and Treasure Island and others on some of that stuff. But it's just making me think more too about like the relief effort that the city is doing around a lot of these resources. You know, I'm getting a lot of updates of different funds being available, and just curious if we can update. I don't know if it would come from you or from the department in the city on what existing relief funding is out there and how to access it, because we could maybe activate folks like Hope and others to help get some of that funding for various uses.
Yeah, I think we could, I believe we included it in a prior board package. One Treasure Island had prepared some fact sheets earlier during the pandemic about resources that were available and distributed those to residents. We've also been distributing information from OEWD and Small Business Commission to our commercial tenants. Yeah, we can take a look back at those resources and make sure that we're maintaining them, you know, as additional opportunities become available.
That would be great, because there's a lot more. There's probably funding, lots of money out there. And one thing that I can do and I can send to you is I've been talking with San Francisco Foundation and others too about kind of the private sources of funding. that can be used for things like food and other kind of more one-time relief stuff that I think could be useful to create like a, you know, to have you guys as that one-stop shop of like, here's the list of resources.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you, Ruby. Okay. I see no other hands up, so that ends the discussion. And I guess we can adjourn. So for all of you,
Hey, John.
happy Thanksgiving. I know this is a different year where we have to, you know, be very conscious of social distancing, but I hope that you're able to connect somehow with your friends and your family, and keep safe. Thank
Thank
you.
you so much. Thank you, everyone. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you all.